The RX-124 Gundam TR6 Kahar 2 is yet another variation of the TR6 Woundwort from the photo novel and manga Advance of Zeta. But before I actually talk about this anymore, I will mention that I did say I was going to do a series on these particular kits, but in usual Mecha Guy Kotsu fashion, I didn't make it part 2 or anything after that. The reason for that is because when I tend to group a lot of kits into the one video, it takes more time. When videos take more time, I tend to push them off into the background, so from here on out, I'm just going to do individual kits. And this one right here is one awesome little individual kit. So once again, I'm just going to start this with a bit of an explanation about Advance of Zeta because it can get a little bit on the confusing side. I know, it constantly confuses me. So first off, Advance of Zeta primarily was a set of articles in a magazine called Dengeki Hobby that was set before Zeta Gundam, even though these particular articles came out 20 years after Zeta Gundam, so they're a little bit of a retcon, so can be kind of confusing. Basically, you've got the Titans, the main bad guys from Gundam Zeta, prototyping up a bunch of awesome looking mobile suits. So the bottom line is, awesome looking mobile suits. But when it does come to the more recently released high-grade premium Bandai kits, they're mainly based on two different mobile suits. That is the TR1 here on the left and the TR6 here on the right. Those tend to be the base mobile suits or a combination of the two. Today, the one we're looking at, the TR6 Kahar 2, that is based heavily on the Woundwort. But anyway, let's get right into it. So as you can tell from the box right here, this of course is a premium Bandai kit, and this video right here would not be possible without those absolutely fantastic people over at Baiyi. So if you find it hard to find some rare, odd, or unusual Gunpla that you can't find anywhere else, I guarantee you will find it over on Baiyi. That's where I got mine, and if you want to get one of yours over there, link is down there in the description. Anyway, as for what we get inside of this box, we've got all the parts required to build the Kahar 2, the manual of course, a whole bunch of included accessories. Just like any of these Woundwort based kits we've seen before, there's a big old sheet of stickers in here. We've got a small sheet of sticker style decals. And it wouldn't be an Advance of Zeta kit without a whole bunch of leftover plastic. Because these are prototype mobile suits, that does mean there is a lot of reused parts from the suits that they're based on. In this particular case, that would be the Woundwort, and as far as I know, and from what I read on the Schizophonic blog, you cannot out-of-box build a standard Woundwort with this kit. And if you want to check out that blog, it is down there, once again, in the description. So finally, there is the finished high-grade Gundam TR6 Kahar 2, and this is one of the most unique-looking mobile suits around. The Woundwort itself is quite a unique-looking mobile suit, with that kind of bug/rabbit kind of vibe. This takes it to a whole different level completely. And that's kind of the beauty of these Advance of Zeta kits. Because this was a bunch of concept designs, this wasn't for an anime or anything like that, it doesn't have to be, well, generically appealing. It can be wild, weird, and awesome, just like this is right here. Also, like I said before, when it comes to these Advance of Zeta kits, the name, for example, Kahar, is what the mobile suit is trying to emulate by using extra parts attached onto the Woundwort. And if you're wondering, well, what exactly is the Kahar was a prototype to the NRX-044 Ashimar from Zeta Gundam. So yes, this does have a similar, cool, almost puck-like transformation that we'll take a look at later on. So essentially, to break this down as simply as possible, it's just the Woundwort once again, in those Titans colors, with big thermonuclear jets for shoulders, a massive communication unit and antenna up over its head, a really cool mask, and a big old wiener. This thing is both unique and ridiculously awesome looking. So there is a quick side-by-side comparison with the standard variant of the Woundwort. Of course, this is in the white colors. This is in that traditional Titan colors. And I will mention this shares a lot of physical traits with this particular kit because it is based on it, which does make a lot of sense lore-wise. But it is also worth mentioning that there is this color variant of the Woundwort. Of course, this is the TR6 Hazel 2, which does have a slightly different booster unit round back than the standard version of the Woundwort here, and this one right here has that standard variant but that this one over here has. So if you do want to build a Woundwort out of box in the Titans colors, you may need this kit, or maybe even this kit, because as far as I know, there is no variant of this Woundwort in the Titans colors. Of course, that is 100% out of box. You could just paint them. So now moving on into the accessories, and here is the high-grade TR6 Kahar with absolutely everything that it comes with. So what we get in here is one of these runnerless stands in black. We've got the composite shield booster, which we see a lot with these Advance of Zeta kits, a pair of shields, a pair of holding hands, as well as a pair of open hands. Lastly then, all this stuff you're seeing down here is for the transformation to the mobile armor mode, which we'll take a look at a little bit later on, but first, let's check out the weapons. First off, as for the onboard weaponry, the TR6 Kahar 2 has a pair of spread beam guns up here on each of the shoulder units for a total of 4. So not only are these shoulders nuclear thermal jet engines, they also pack some firepower. As for the pair of shields we have in here, these are in matching colors to the mobile suit itself, that is that white, dark navy blue, and that dark purple. Around on the reverse side we have the attachment point, which is very simple. To attach this, you just remove the hand, slide this section up onto the wrist, and that peg right there is where you stick the shield. This holds on nice and secure, and these shields do also play a role in the transformation to that Aasimar looking mobile armor mode that we'll see a little bit later on. Next up here, and definitely the biggest weapon slash shield in this kit, is the composite shield booster. Once again, this is one cool weapon, but this doesn't use as many features in this kit as it does with a couple of the variants of the wound wart we would have seen before. Also, I will mention there are 3 stickers used on this, one for the lens section of the sight, and 2 fairly huge ones that go on the length of the railgun section up front. So that, of course, is these long ones right here, and one of the shiny green ones. So this time around, the composite shield booster does still include that transformation, or should I say parts formation, to the claw mode for use in melee combat. You do have to remove 3 sections off this, which is the railgun section up front, the outstretched longer versions of the claw segments, replace those with the somewhat flexed claw segments, and this right here is what we get. So it does look pretty cool, it's a cool melee weapon, but we don't have as many features or the included wire we would have seen before with the standard version of the wound wart. When attached into the hand in claw mode for close quarters combat, this is without a doubt a huge and foreboding weapon, but it kinda goes without saying that this big ol' widespread weapon and those big ol' massive shoulders and legs, it all gets a little bit awkward. Everything kind of clashes off each other, so it's hard to get some nice poses, and definitely pretty much impossible to get anything dynamic. But when you do put this side by side with a standard size Gundam like the Gundam Mark II, this is one big and gnarly looking weapon. There's also a building for scale. This thing is cool. I find that when it comes to posing and general looks, it does work a lot better in beam rifle mode. It's big, it's long, it can point it around the place, and it doesn't clash as much with the armor. Once again, it is big, so you will have some armor clashing issues, but not so many. The only real issue you may actually have with this particular weapon is you cannot use the shield at the same time on the same arm because, well, there isn't enough space. And therefore that leads to another bit of an issue. When this transforms, it does use both of the shields, so if it doesn't have both shields equipped, so technically it wouldn't be able to transform. It would have been nice if we got this weapon in here as well, which is the beam rifle that came with the TR6 Hazel 2, which is what you'll see it holding on the Gundam Wiki, which can be held with the shield. That would have been a nice inclusion, but sadly does not come in the box. This does kind of lead into what is this kit's best and worst feature depending on your outlook on it. There's a real gotta catch 'em all kind of vibe about the Advance of Zeta kits based on the lore, because this is the Titans team messing with prototypes, a lot of parts from some units used on other units, to make a lot of the things that would have been in Advance of Zeta featured in the novel and manga. You may actually have to buy multiple kits to put them together, just like with this particular beam rifle. Because these are premium Bandai kits and a little harder to get, that does make that kind of a negative aspect in my opinion. Also, I do get the feeling this beam rifle does come with some other kits, maybe some normal release kits, so if it does, drop it down there in the comments and I'll pin it, just in case anybody wants one. But I'm not necessarily sure. Everything else accessory-wise that comes in here is part of the parts formation to the mobile armor mode, so we'll take a look at that a little bit later after making a couple of comments on the articulation. So if you've seen either of my other videos on the smaller variants of the TR6, which is the Wound Wart, and the Hazel 2, you've got the gist of what's going on inside of this, because this is just a variant of those particular kits. so I'm just going to talk about what is different in this and how that affects the overall kit. Starting up top, we have that antenna which can rotate here. This little segment can move up and down like so. The entire antenna array can move up and out like this, so there is rotation up here. A hinge that can bring this in and out like so. A second hinge just below that to angle it just right up on the back of the head. Another hinge joint right here which can bring that up once again to align it up onto the head. And another one down here closer into this little abdomen section. The head is essentially what we saw before with the various versions of the wound wart. We just have this extension up on the top of the head which doesn't really get in the way so much. When this almost canopy-like section around back is out of the way, you've got full head movement, believe it or not. I did not expect so much out of this. Oh yeah, a little bit of a giggity goo. We have some extended shoulders on this compared to your standard TR6. All these do is rotate here. They're essentially just an extension section. As for those big old shoulder boosters, the only thing that's really going on in here is this little segment here. This allows them to tilt in and out just like this. But yeah, if you strip off both of those shoulders, pop off this part from the back, besides that big old, well, wiener, this is exactly the same as what we would have seen with any other version of the wound wart. As for the wiener, that doesn't actually move. So now moving on to the transformation, and like I mentioned, this is a parts formation. Just in case you're not entirely familiar with what that means, it means you have to strip it all apart, take away some sections that were used in the mobile suit mode, and replace them with new sections to make the mobile armor mode. In general, this does make the mobile armor mode or flight form more stable than if it was a full transformation, so it is a trade-off of full transforming kit for the stability and simplicity you get with a high grade. So as for the transformation, in general it is quite simple. This was my first time doing it right here for the video, and everything went pretty much okay. It's similar enough to what we would have seen before with the different variants of the wound wart. Definitely a lot better than the Hyzenthlay we would have seen before. That was a bit on the tough side. But this was pretty straightforward. I did notice that with the shields there is two options to the way that you attach them into the shoulder segments. One has them at a lower angle and the other one has them at this nice curve, and that is what we use in this particular transformation. The way the antenna section tucks away into the front segment is pretty cool, and the finished transformed mobile armor is pretty damn solid. So yeah, impressive and very, very nice. So anyway, this right here is the TR6 Kahar in its mobile armor mode. Just in case you don't know, this is the atmospheric flight variant of the TR6 wound wart. So the wound wart could fly in atmosphere, just not very well, so fitting it with these parts that are very similar to the NRX-044 Ashimar make it better suited to in-atmosphere flight. As for the high-grade model kit right here, it's solid, looks awesome, and is keeping up with the trend of ridiculously cool-looking Advance of Zeta flight forms. So in case you are curious as to the parts that are lost during the parts formation, it's actually quite a lot. So the arm extenders, the little section that had that canopy type armor on the back with the antenna, the bits that held the shields onto the wrists, and the biggest section, just like we would have seen with the standard version of the wound wart, is the full head and torso. So that is lost in the parts formation to mobile armor mode. If you're like me, you're probably curious as to if this big old weapon right here can be used while it is in mobile armor mode. Well, I guess we'll find out. The Kahar 2 here is not without its onboard weapons. Those beam scatter guns up front are still attached on there, so it still has some offensive weaponry. But hey, who doesn't want more big guns? Down here on what remains of its wiener, it does have that little extra drop down arm segment. That doesn't actually do anything with this kit because we are missing some of the parts. With the Hazel 2, we could use this beam rifle with it, like what you're seeing right now on the screen, but we don't have the particular adapter in here to do that, nor do we have this rifle, so if you have both kits, of course you can do that, just like you see on the Gundam Wiki. But let's see what we can do with this, and first off, let's see, can it be held in that little wiener arm? Pop that out, and nah, the angle isn't just right. However, we do have the arms down here, so maybe we can pop it into those. So the TR6's arms are still hanging out down here. We can pop off the hand. Let's try it out. And there we go, you can actually get it attached hanging down from one of the arms. Sure, it mightn't be the most aerodynamic addition to it, but hey, you can attach it on there for some extra mobile armor weaponry. So all I can say is I definitely hope that Bandai keep releasing these Advance of Zeta high grade kits. Mainly because I want them to get to the point where they make the TR6 inlay. And just in case you don't know about the TR6 inlay, it's an absolutely massive mobile armor, and see those things up there? Those tiny little yellow things? Yeah, that's one of those. There's 6 of them. That thing would be colossal. I know there is some resin kits out there, some third-party kits, etc., but I want a big, old 1/44th scale, massive TR6 inlay. So anyway, that right there is it for the review, and just like the previously released versions of the TR6, which is the Hazel 2 and the Woundwort, this right here to me is gold tier. In general, the quality of this kit is standard high-grade quality, but this brings so much additional unique features to the table that it makes it so interesting. If you've never tried one of these kits, I highly recommend this one right here. Sure, you cannot build a standard Woundwort from this kit, but this one is just like the Woundwort, but a little bit of extra fun. All of these kits are ridiculously unique. These are Gundam kits, but at the same time, the designs are off the wall completely. They're big, they're spiky, they're rounded in the right places. Both the mobile suit modes and the mobile armor modes look great. The Hazentlay is a little bit on the huge and unwieldy side, but it does make an absolutely awesome display, so I cannot recommend these TR6 kits enough. Sure, they're not Platinum or Gundarium tier because they don't bring any of that extra physical wow factor that those sort of kits do, but they're still fantastic because of their concepts. Anyway, if you do want one of your own, there's a link down there in the description. You can get yours through Buyee, just like I did. As always, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to come back for more Gunpla reviews, and I will see you next time. So once again, I can't end this video right here without thanking each and every one of you guys for watching this video, as well as liking and subscribing. And of course, special thanks to my channel members and patrons, Craig Jury, Kaiser721, Tyler Sanders, Caleb Engelhart, and Sean T.